So we're gonna talk about love in action today, and kind of just what gets in our way of really being love and embodying love in our life. And of course, the first person I think of is my son Simon, as a real example of this. And I think my favorite thing that he does that expresses it is he's crawling around the house very quickly these days. And he'll crawl around the corner and peek his head around, and he'll level his eyes and smile and say, "Dad, Dad." Oh. We had a guest over this weekend, and she was really impressed with that. But he just is this expression of love in action. And I think about that, and I think, gosh, we were all born with that energy. And we were immersed in this real sea of love. He's got all his needs provided. He wakes up in the morning with little squeals. And then we go out and play, and I change him and feed him, and we walk, and he falls asleep again, and we start the cycle over. And so it's just this kind of endless energy, almost this sea of love that he's immersed in. And I think that all of us, if we were cared for at that age, we were like that. We were in that energy. And I think of the story of the birth of Jesus, and we talk about this time every year. And I would suggest to us that at heart, we're like that too. That Christ child really is in essence who we truly are. And it's kind of our story. It is the story and the reminder of that birth that's happening within us, the divine that's awakening. If you are familiar with the Waldorf tradition of education, the founder Rudolf Steiner actually referred to the first 3 years of our life as the Christ years, when we live in that state of consciousness. So he looked around at the world and said, something's going on here. This Christ consciousness really exists. Now, I think in many ways, just as we are born into it, we get conditioned out of it. And I would say that the rest of our life, if we're into spirituality and we're into remembering our power and our love, we're conditioning ourselves to get back into that state of consciousness. So somewhere along the lines when we are small, we get some messaging, and oftentimes it's not even verbal, it's just in the world around us, that we are limited in some way. And whatever that messaging happens to show up as, we start to gradually move out of that natural sea of love that we are all born into. And it could be a belief system such as, life is painful. We pick that up from the world around us and we say, no matter what we do, it's just painful, it's arduous. Or maybe life is difficult. And we watch our parents, or we watch our family, or we watch the world struggle day after day, and we get this message that if we struggle and we push and strive, then maybe at some point we can relax a little bit and enjoy ourselves, but life is a struggle. It's tough. And so we kind of have these belief systems that are just so open as a kid, and we just drink it in because we're willing to just merge with everything, and gradually we start to leave that state of pure divine love that we see in that Jesus story and in my little son Simon. And so I kind of want to share with you a new vision, and it's one that you may not have thought of for a while, or maybe you have, but I would wager to say we don't really live it moment to moment. And that is, what if life really is that childlike state of consciousness? It's a simple thought. But if you look around and see generation after generation, year after year, every child being born into that state of consciousness, it's logical to say, what if life as a whole really is that energy? And that we have this sort of spectrum, if we compare ourselves to a cell phone. This is a weird analogy, I know. But if we were to compare ourselves to a cell phone, is able to stream the internet at all times and get information. What if we are able to stream that divine love? And not only that information, but it's catered personally to us. And I would wager to say it's an internet of feeling as well as information. Internet of feeling that we're able to dip into. It's like the God net. And we're flowing in it all the time. Now, everything that we need, just like a little baby, is right there. The friends, the guidance, the information, the intelligence, it's all right there. And we're bathed in this sea of love. Now, if there's some sort of resistance going on in you to this, I would just invite you to say it's not really naive. I think of it as an expanded vision of what is truly possible. At one point, it's very ancient, and it's also very modern and futuristic at the same time. And I would say that it's our soul's calling that's really calling us back to that state of divine love. Now we look at the Jesus story, and to me, at its essence, I think it really symbolizes abundant life, abundant possibility. And at the very center is this energy of divine love, which is the Christ child, right? Now in Unity, we look at everything in the Bible and we interpret it symbolically. As instead of it being all out here, it's taking place within us. It's part of our spiritual journey of awakening. So we all know that Mary and Joseph, they're told by the angels, go hide in Egypt. Because this King Herod, is sending out this decree to kill all the firstborn children. So we want you to protect little baby Jesus. So the angel goes back, tells them when they can go back to Bethlehem. And so we kind of see these messages already from the angels, which we might say are our own messages from Spirit guiding us. Now the shepherds also get a message, and they say this divine child is going to be born. Go and hang out and see him. And the shepherds get the message, and they go, and they're sort of these protective energies in our life that hang around and guide us as this child, this divine consciousness is born and grows within us. Then from there, we see that the wise men from afar, they come from this far land, and I think of them almost like our own mind that's sort of caught up out here in all the external things, and it sees this star, which is kind of like this realization that maybe life is more than just all this external stuff. And it says, I'm going to go see what this is about, this realization. And they go and they witness this sort of divine energy, this divine child, and they place their gifts of material abundance at the feet of spiritual abundance. So you put all of this together, and it's this really rich story, rich with meaning. And the energy of it is this absolute potential that is in every single one of us, that we have all the guidance from the angels, we have all the protection from the shepherds, and finally, this birth takes place in this manger scene. And if you think of a manger, it's a very humble place. It's not the 5-star inn hotel, right? It's this humble place with all the animals, which is kind of saying we've got to step aside from those ways that we think life is and open and become humble to something totally new for it to be born in us. Now this is a powerful story, and we'll talk more about it in our Christmas Eve service. But I think all of it is pointing to this Christ child, this return to this divine love, this love in action within us. And so we're moving back there. Now there's another aspect of the story which I hinted at, which is the Herod consciousness. Now Herod is that ruler that wanted to kill the Christ. And so we see in ourselves, especially, but as well in the world, that there is an energy that just wants to squash whenever we have a spiritual aspiration. Oh, you think you're spiritual? Take that. And whatever that happens to be, maybe it's doubt. I don't know if I can believe in that. Or maybe it's this energy of our ego that we've got to go out and do all these things in order to be lovable. A lot of times people look at Unity and they say, oh, it's just a bunch of hippies, they join in at the very end and they sing the peace song. It's all about peace and love. And I would say, well, thank you, hippies, because that energy, peace and love is an eternal truth, right? It didn't start in the 1960s America. And by the way, we have a lot more tools than that now. But there's this energy in its subtle forms and its big forms that look at spirituality and say, no, don't do that. What I want you to focus on is the world out here, the ego out here, whatever that happens to be. And we start to get locked in our own minds into limitation. And this shows up so many ways. One of the first ways I think about it showing up is this idea that the mind is greater than the soul. Mind is more powerful. The mind used to be this sort of tool that we had that really enriched our lives, that we could create wonderful things with. But now it's kind of become everything. You feel that? There's this energy that's so strong, that's vibrating everywhere, that when we are posed with a situation, sometimes people will say, most of the time, they'll say, what do you think? But very rarely do people say to an engineer, what do you feel about that equation? What do you think about that equation? And so we're kind of dissuaded from that feeling energy, which is the language of our soul. We're not really taught emotional intelligence in school. Emotional intelligence should be taught to everybody. And so we're starting to get these super smart individuals that still haven't learned how to stop punching their brother or sister. Right? But they're super, super smart. What about, our day, our schedule? We can map out moment to moment, hour to hour, what our schedule is going to be, and the world really praises us for that. You're so organized, you're so responsible. But what about the moment-to-moment guidance of Spirit in the present moment that's speaking to us in the form of our deepest feelings? So this sort of energy of mind is just praised.